What is your name and where are we?
My name is Jordana Barrick, and we're downstairs at Mugs Cafe in downtown Fort Collins.
How long have you been gluten-free?
I have been gluten-free for almost 7 years. Let's see, I think I was about 25 when I first realized that my body just was not happy, and I took the steps to make a difference and change that. So 7 years, it's a long time when you think back about it, but it's just become such a big part of my life, or just a standard in my life, that I don't really notice it too much.
So can you share with our listeners like what happened or how did you become gluten-free and what the process was like for you?
Sure. Like I said, a long time ago, I was going through life and I had a headache every single day for 13 months straight, is about what I've calculated. And I would go to the doctor and they would just tell me it was chronic headaches. And it kind of frustrated me because I didn't quite feel like that was natural for a human to just have headaches. I didn't think that was a standard, and I wasn't sure if I had an ibuprofen deficiency or or if there was something truly wrong with me. And so I stumbled upon this news article. I believe, I can't remember which magazine it was in. It was in some sort of women's health magazine. And it talked about celiac disease and the gluten-free diet. And as I was reading over the magazine, I was reading all the symptoms of celiac disease, and it was just like, I've got that. Wait a minute, I'm experiencing that. And so I decided, I took the news article into my doctor and was like, I think I have this. Can we do these blood tests? And this was 7 years ago, so it was back before celiac and the gluten intolerance was really wide known. And so it was still being misdiagnosed as other things, or doctors just wanted to sweep it under the rug as something else. And it was just really frustrating. And so I took this article into my doctor, and this doctor was like, well, we'll do the blood test, but don't change your diet. And that kind of seemed kind of weird to me. And, I do feel like a lot of times doctors are just educated to push pills at you. And that's what they get rewarded for in the medical field. That's a whole nother issue, but
Right. True, yeah.
So I asked for the blood test. He took the blood test. The blood test came back. They called me, but they just got my answering machine, and so they left this message that said, oh, your blood test came in, everything looks fine, give us a call if you have any questions.
Wow.
And there was no, come back in, let's help you figure out what's wrong with you, why you're not feeling well. It was such a just push a person through to see the next patient. And so I was kind of frustrated with the whole experience of trying to get officially diagnosed for celiac or the gluten intolerance, but because sometimes a person wants affirmation that yes, they are supposed to change their diet, because otherwise it makes it easier to fall back into that same old lifestyle. And so I went home, and the day that I got the blood test taken, I changed my diet immediately, just because I had a feeling that I wanted to try this. And within a week, the headache went away. Within 3 weeks, all my digestive problems, so I was experiencing the headaches, I had digestive problems, I was tired, I wasn't very social, and so then within a week, all of that, or within a week the headaches changed, and within 3 weeks all of that changed. And it just blew me away, and it felt so right that I was on the right path, I was doing the right thing for my body. And then whenever I would cheat, it affirmed it even more. So a month down the road, I would have a cookie because it was just like, oh my God, I have to have bread of some sort. I miss it. And so I would cheat, and after a month I would cheat, and about 2 hours later I would have a massive headache.
Wow.
And it would be even worse than it was before. It'd be like a migraine type pain headache. And so I was like, okay, well, don't do that again. So then another 2 months went by, and I cheated again, and I think I had a piece of pizza or something.
Oh, wow. That's a good way to cheat, though.
Yeah.
If you're going to cheat, go for it.
Yeah, exactly. And so So then 30 minutes later, I would have this massive headache. So it seemed like the longer that my body healed from eating gluten, the more sensitive I became to it, and it impacted me immediately. So then it got to the point um, where I would eat it and then immediately I would get hives. And I never experienced hives before when I was just eating it every day. And so again, it just continued to affirm that I'm not supposed to be eating these foods. And eventually, my life just kind of just I didn't think about the gluten foods. I didn't think about the cookies and the breads and those sorts of things. And I just stuck to my standard diet. And I think the hardest part about it was people around me. They didn't understand. It wasn't as widely known yet. And they just didn't understand how I could live my life not eating certain foods, you know, not being able to drink a beer, not being able to have a piece of cake at a birthday party. And I think they felt more bad for me than I did. And I constantly had to be like, no, it's fine. I don't need that. I feel so great and it's so right for me to not eat that food. Like, don't worry about me. And so that was one of the hardest things, I think, was for the people around me as I was going through this lifestyle change. And so yeah, I think,
that's
is
awesome.
that about covering?
Yeah. So folks that are listening may not necessarily be gluten-free, but they might be helping someone or a family member or a loved one. What kind of tips or tricks of the trade that you can tell people that are helping someone else with their gluten-free menu?
I guess first I would say try to understand what they're dealing with, especially if it's a really close loved one. When I first learned that I needed to stick to this gluten-free lifestyle, I did a lot of research for myself, and I don't think that's something that you necessarily need to do for your loved ones. It's definitely something that your loved one who is experiencing this should do. I educated myself on just the physiological process of what your body goes through. But so understand in a way why it is so important that they stick to this lifestyle. Like, why? Because your life will be better if they're happier too. And then I guess don't be afraid to try these alternative foods and options yourself. The gluten-free diet's real similar to the low-carb diet and all these other trend diets. And I think, in a way, the market kind of expects some of the food allergy type diets to be that way, even though it's not true, because there are some people whose healthiness and vitality in life truly depends on following that type of diet. So it can be a healthier lifestyle for yourself as well to embrace. It doesn't mean you have to cut everything out, but just be understanding and be willing to try things. There's a lot more options out there on the market today than there were 7 years ago when I first started. So now I do eat cakes and breads and things because I have those alternative flours that I could go to.
That's great feedback and just advice. Now, so what happens what kind of advice would you give someone who they just found out that they're gluten intolerant or have other kind of special menu needs, or they're interested in just trying out the gluten-free diet in general?
Well, I would say stick with it. It's one of those things where I don't think you truly know, or I don't think anybody else truly knows what's right for you. It's up to you to experiment with this and see how you feel. And my father's a chiropractor and a doctor as well, and he always told me to cut everything out of my diet that could be of concern and slowly add things back and see how you feel, but only add 1 or 2 things at a time so you know what it is that's impacting you. And it's also funny because in my group of friends here in Fort Collins, there's so many of us that have different food allergies, and we love to have dinner parties, but it's always like, okay, so this person's dairy-free, and this person's wheat-free, and this person's soy-free, and so what can we all combine? But it's really fun to experiment with it all, and we have some amazing meals together. But really, yeah, stick with it, because you'll know what's right for you if you change your diet and you feel better and you feel alive and healthy and have energy. but if it's a hard thing. It's a hard lifestyle to stick to. It's especially gluten-free is just what I know, and it's expensive to buy alternative flours and alternative foods and alternative beer. It's expensive to eat that way sometimes, and that's tough. I've reduced my grocery shopping and my food portions just to make everything last financially.
Do you have any last comments or advice that you'd like to give our listeners, or just something for them to think about?
It's made such a big difference in my life to change, and I have gone through periods where I've had a harder time sticking to it, and I definitely noticed a difference in my body, and so it's like, okay, we'll get back on track, because this isn't good for you, this isn't right. It is hard, but yeah, like I said before, sticking with it really will make a difference for you. I think some people go through a relapse in a way where, especially I've seen it with the gluten-free diet, is they'll completely eliminate gluten from their diet, their body will heal itself, and then like, because nowadays when I do eat gluten, because my body's completely healed, I don't notice impacts of it as much unless I eat it more and more again. And it kind of becomes this cycle that people can fall into, where you're like, oh, well, I must be over it. I can eat this now, and then your body starts to degrade again. And so it's like, no, you discovered this out, stick with it.
Well, thanks so much. This is great. Really appreciate it.
It's been fun.